What's going on, my fellow Kino Lords? So I just got home from a screening for Longlegs, which is written and directed by Os Perkins. So Longlegs is actually a film that was in my top 10 most anticipated films of 2024. Mostly because of the fact that I've always seen so much potential in Os Perkins. Like I even with Hansel and Gretel, a film that a lot of people shat on when it came out, I just thought I still think that his ability to direct and present a film through not only just like eye-popping visuals, but just in general, this creative aesthetic flow is just so engrossing and so compelling, and just has so much talent. And again, like even though he hasn't like really had that film that has like really captivated most people and really seen like so much potential in him, I personally have always seen that potential, with films like The Black Coat's Daughter, and again, even Hansel and Gretel, a film that really nobody liked. Um, but yeah, like so for that reason, like I was super hyped for Longlegs. On top of the fact that the casting was really interesting, when you have Mike and Monroe, which I haven't really seen her in anything really all that interesting since It Follows. Maybe just I live under a cave and I've missed a few things, but really, It Follows to me was like the last thing that she did where I was like, this is an interesting and unique kind of movie. So she's back, in an Oz Perkins film. And then on top of that, you have the man, the myth, the legend himself, Nick Cage, playing the serial killer character in this film. Of course, I'm going to be on board for this shit. Um, and, after seeing it, I got to say, I think it's a pretty good movie. I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't a little bit underwhelmed by it. But overall, I think it's pretty damn good. And everything that I've really loved about Oz Perkins so far is present in this movie. So I think that if you loved all of Oz Perkins stuff, you're gonna at least enjoy this movie. Um, Again, I guess I'll start off by talking about just the plot elements of this film. It's actually really simple. I mean, it's in terms of plot and writing, it's and story, it's really nothing all that like unique and special. I mean, it's a serial killer detective mystery thriller movie with, I mean, it is in terms of like actual atmosphere, it feels a lot just like a straight horror movie. But in terms of plot and narrative, it is like a detective mystery movie. That's akin to movies like Zodiac, where you have the serial killer who is kind of like intentionally leaving behind this paper trail of these like cryptic letters and whatnot, and is just trying. It's like in a way almost trying to get somebody to decode them and catch them eventually. And again, like that is basically like in general what this movie is. And you know, even though this film has an incredibly simple plot that I think we've seen a lot of times, this movie really like it really is about the direction and Oz Perkins' talent behind the camera that makes this film stand out and makes it so engaging. Because I feel like if you gave this script to just anybody else, it would have just been like a whatever mid movie, kind of forgettable and just not really would have worked all that well. But luckily, Os Perkins is at the helm here, and he knocks it out of the park in terms of how he presents this movie. Because from start to finish, again, his cinematic eye is so present, and his ability to utilize score and sound design throughout the film just really elevates the really simplistic material. And again, like if it wasn't for his ability to kind of think about ways to utilize sound design and utilize camera movements to not only build suspense, but to make a scene genuinely creepier than it already is on paper, then this movie would have not like been as good. And again, like through everything, like the flow of this movie, I think is really great. I love the pace of it. I can see maybe some, people going into this movie expecting like a super scary like horror movie. Like if you're going into this movie expecting like the scariest movie of the decade or ever made, or just yeah, I mean just really in that sense. Like if you're going into this movie for that, to have like this really like fast paced, super scary movie, I don't think that you're gonna like it all that much because this film is delicately paced, and the scares that are in this movie are quite subtle. Like technically there are jump scares here, but they're not shameless about it. Like it's most of the jump scares that I remember, which are quite not many. There's a few of them. They're they kind of jump out at you in a way that one you don't really see coming, and two in a way that doesn't really insist that this is like a big jump scare moment, or like insist that this is a moment that you really need to be shitting your pants over. But like it's there and it's present and really really effective. And there's also just like striking imagery in this movie. Like there is some pieces of imagery in this movie that are genuinely unsettling. And again, this film, and in terms of plot and narrative, and concept, it does tackle, it does revolve around elements of the occult and satanic rituals and things like that. And whether or not it takes it literally and goes into the supernatural route with it, I won't spoil that. But like in terms of some of the imagery that it shows in regards to that, there are some, again, like some scenes and some pieces of imagery that really worked and are quite unsettling. One in particular having to do with like this black, I think it's almost like a black, like a black nun, like a black mass of a nun with like these like piercing eyes that are, it's just really, really, again, like off-putting imagery that I think works really well. But again, like just the presentation of this film in terms of how some scenes transition from one to another, like there's some really great transitions here. The way that the camera flows throughout the film builds suspense really well, and again adds a sense of style to it that again like elevates the material. And again, like I can't talk good enough about Os Perkins' ability to present a movie, because I feel like he's doing it better than almost any filmmaker out there right now. I know that might be a hot take, but I really like, in terms of the way that I enjoy watching cinema and what I appreciate in cinema, I feel like he is up there as one of the best in terms of presentation, and I really, really love that. Even like like he plays around with aspect ratio in this film, where you kind of have like again like this like 4:3, kind of almost like home video aspect ratio for like flashback sequences that take place in the past. And again, like it works quite well. I can't really pinpoint exactly why it does, but it's probably just because it just kind of gives it a more like almost like home video authentic type feel to it. But yeah, like I can't say enough great things about his ability to present a film. All that shit is there. The use of score, the sound design, all that shit, the editing. To me, all that shit is like second to none fantastic. Really, to me, what is a little bit underwhelming about this film is the screenplay and the writing. And it's not necessarily just because, as I mentioned earlier, like in terms of serial killer, like unraveling the mystery type stuff, it's not just because it's like a bit simplistic, but it's just there's a handful of dialogue throughout the experience that does kind of feel like he is trying too hard to get everybody in the audience to understand certain things. Like there's a lot, I don't say a lot, but there's a handful of moments where, again, which is a huge pet peeve of mine, where there's something that's displayed visually, and as an audience member, I can infer the information through the visuals, but yet there's a character that just outright says the information and kind of treats the audience like we're stupid. And that happens, like, again, there's a decent number of times in the movie where that happens. I don't know, I've never been a big fan of that, and unfortunately I'm not really a fan of that here. And yeah, like again, on top of the fact that we have the writing that is a bit spoon-feedy and doesn't really trust its audience, because I feel like Os Perkins here is trying to, kind of garner a more mainstream audience. He's trying to broaden his horizons a little bit with his cinematic appeal, and which I don't blame him for. I think he deserves it. Like this film was, I mean, my theater was fucking packed, and luckily everybody was great. Like it was a pretty great theater experience. I was like 100% sure there's gonna be a few fuckheads in there that were gonna ruin it, but they didn't. It was surprising. But this movie's gonna be selling out all over the place, and I'm glad that he's at least the marketing team for this did a fucking phenomenal job because everybody's really talking about this movie and they're buying tickets for it. So I think it's great. But I do think like he wrote this movie in a way to appeal to a larger audience. And in one way, I think like it works through the concept, and then the other ways in terms of execution of the writing didn't really work for me. It just kind of comes off like again like you don't trust your audience enough. And I didn't really get that vibe with a film like The Black Coat's Daughter, which to me actually darker of a film, not only in terms of concept but in atmosphere, and also a bit more ambiguous and interpretive with how it approaches the filmmaking style. To me, The Black Coat's Daughter is still my favorite Os Perkins film, and again, if you're a fan of Longlegs and you haven't seen The Black Coat's Daughter, I highly recommend that one. But yeah, like I just think like unfortunately the writing, I think like in terms of character theme and in terms of even like story revelations, it's and again obviously like the dialogue as I mentioned, it's not the most compelling. Like even what happens in the end of the movie, like this big reveal, it's not the it's not the most unpredictable thing ever. Like it's something that people are going to be thinking about throughout the movie, and then when it happens, they're going to be like, "Oh, okay, so that was that, I guess." But and also one other criticism of this movie, and I hate to say this, I really do. It kind of pains me to say this, but Nick Cage in this movie, I don't know. It's not even his fault. It's not even his fault. I just think that I don't even know if it's his performance exactly, but the incorporation of his character and his performance and just like the character design of him, I just really wasn't buying all the way. Something about it didn't feel really all that authentic. It felt like very movie-like, and it felt a little bit cartoony. Almost like it was trying too hard in terms of like the design. It was trying too hard to be creepy, and it just unfortunately I didn't really feel all that unsettled by his character for the most part. The beginning of this movie I thought worked well when it first presents his character, but later on in the movie when we start seeing him more and we get like entire scenes with him, I'm not sure if it really works all the way for me. And I think it's mostly because of the design of him. I think if they would have dialed back a bit and I don't know, maybe not try to be a bit over the top with, how, like off his rocker he is, I think that it would have worked a little better. But like just his appearance alone doesn't feel very authentic. It doesn't feel organic or raw. And I think when it comes to like, a serial killer movie or something like that, like something that's meant to be a bit rooted in reality, it just didn't work for me all the way, unfortunately. But yeah, I mean, it's still a really good movie. Like I still really enjoyed this. I'm still gonna recommend it because I did enjoy it, and I think it is because again of Os Perkins' presentation ability to just really like elevate material that might not be all that great to begin with, but give something to Os Perkins and he's gonna make something decent out of it. And I think he really does that well here with this movie. So I got to give him like tons of credit regardless, because even though I still don't think he has written that screenplay that has really compelled me through and through, I can always count on his direction and his ability to present a film to keep me engaged with it and to give me this really unsettling vibe, because this film throughout the experience does have this lingering sense of dread that I think is, again, very compelling and will keep people on the edge of their seats and will be worth your time and money. So, yeah, I think that's all I got to say about it, honestly. I don't want to say too much in terms of plot revelations and stuff like that because I want to keep it non-spoilery. But that's all I'll say for now, guys. Let me go and give my rating. I'll give Longlegs a solid 7 out of 10 for now. I could see myself revisiting this film again and seeing how I feel about it the second time. But I don't know if my rating will go up or anything, but it is a movie that I would like to watch again because it is quite good. But that's it, guys. That's all I got to say about Longlegs. If you really enjoy how to say about Longlegs, please give it a thumbs up and share it amongst your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel to be updated on more film-related content.